Good morning. Let me get situated. Tried to rearrange my desk a little bit. This microphone cover gets fur all over. I must have picked up enough fur this morning that I could have made another dog. Let me get comfortable now. You got your coffee. Let's do dad talks. And I don't know where that bruise came from. I have bruises all over me that I don't know where they came from. Got a dad story. It's Father's Day tomorrow. What are you going to do? Is your dad still alive? Do you still visit with your dad? Typically on Father's Day, I run over to Jefferson Barracks and go visit my dad's grave. Kind of hang out at the cemetery a hot minute. Because I'm one of those kooky kind of chicks that like walking around looking at graves, especially the Civil War soldiers that are in Jefferson Barracks. You know who I am. I don't think I have to tell you. And I need a new shtick. I need a new intro. Been cleaning, like I do. Nervous kind of cleaning. Although I will say my nerves right now are pretty steady. And you can always sorta tell where I am in my life with how fluffy I am. Fluffy. That's a good term, right? When I'm all anxious, when I'm all nervous, I get extremely thin because food is not my thing. And right now, this point I am at in my life, I kind of don't give a fuck about anything. Do you know? Are you there? Now don't get that mixed up with burnt out, because I've been burnt out for a long time. And if you find yourself saying, I have no joy in my life, I'm just not happy, I have no passion, nothing feels good, nothing feels right, nothing seems right, I feel so disconnected with the world, with people, my job, my family, that is burnt out, borderlining depression. Chicken in my throat. I want to talk a dad story because I saw something on the internet that of course has got it all abuzz. That young dad that took his two girls into the woman's bathroom. And part of the internet was all up in arms. I'm going to tell you a dad's story. My dad was a character. He was a character. He had his moments, and then he had his moments. He was bound and determined after my mom died in 1968. I was 6 years old, my sister was 3. My dad was a functioning alcoholic, and I mean alcoholic. But he loved to do things with his girls. Loved to do things with his girls. We would go to the rodeo. We would go to the ice capades. We would go to the Muni. We would get in the car. We would drive as far as we could drive, and then would turn around and come home, or we'd stay somewhere. Hannibal, Springfield, Illinois, Sedalia, DuQuoin, because my dad was a truck driver, so he knew the route. We'd go to Alton. My dad would also take us into bars with him. Schultz's Happy Hollow was his favorite place, known today as Biggie's on Watson. But we would go to the arena, which is no longer there, and whether it be the rodeo, the ice capades, or the circus, whatever it might be. My dad, I was always in charge of my sister, always. Maybe I'll tell you about the time we drove to California after my mom died, because I think that's how I'm traumatized. But anyway, Dad would take us to the arena, whatever the event was. He always got really, really good tickets. He knew a guy who knew a guy. And being young, and of course we lived in a completely different time back then. When we had to go to the bathroom, he would say, hold your sister's hand, take her into the bathroom, you girls go to the bathroom, and I will be standing right outside the door. My dad being a character, not bad looking. Any nice looking woman that would go in after us, he would say, hey, my daughters are in there, can you kind of just like oversee to make sure that they're okay in there? Random, really nice looking women would be like, I won't say oogling, but someone always was in the shadow, kind of looking over. And then subsequently, this very nice looking woman would walk us out of the bathroom, and my dad would say to her, thank you very much. And then he'd say to me, he'd say, did you take care of your sister? Is everything okay? I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. I mean, it was routine. That's how it was. Trying to think of another really good dad story, because again, traumatized. And we want to know why people have issues throughout their life and why trust and panic and anxiety set in. Do you have one of those stories? Do you have a dad story that left you with trauma? After Mom died in 1968, Dad decided he was going to drive us across the country to go to California. Now, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. I don't know time frame. We were young. I think everybody was just distraught over my mother's death. And we drive from St. Louis to Culver City, California, which is right outside of Anaheim, I believe, if my memory serves me. And you almost need a map sometimes when I'm talking about California, which I rarely talk about California. I've been there a couple times. Anyway, my sister, now my dad drove Lincolns and Cadillacs up until he didn't drive Lincolns and Cadillacs. I learned to drive on a 1976 Lincoln. But anyway, every state that we drove through to get to California, my sister notoriously was car sick. Who do you think was the one that had to clean up after her? And my dad would say, take your sister into the bathroom, get her cleaned up, change her clothes. My sister was still in diapers at the age of 3. Trauma. And get your sister all cleaned up, and then get back in the car, and then we'll go. It did not matter how many states, do the song in your head, Route 66, every state my sister threw up in. My dad would just say, take your sister and go get her cleaned up. Go get her cleaned up. So Dad decides, we're going to stop in Vegas on the way to Anaheim, because we were going to Disneyland, and we were going to go see my Aunt Mary and my Uncle Ronnie, who I loved dearly. We decided we're going to stop in Vegas for 2 days. And we stayed at some cheesy motel that had a swimming pool. It was across the street from the Silver Slipper and the Gold Nugget. I believe, now mind you, I was 6 years old, okay? And my memory, don't ask me where I put my keys, don't ask me what I ate for lunch yesterday, but I can tell you something that happened in 1968. because my memory is vivid and crisp. And being a little girl, when you take in all the sights and all the sounds because you're trying to tune out all the drama, trauma, and chaos in your life, we're in Vegas. Not the new Vegas, but the old Vegas. And Dad wanted to go gamble. Now, I could swim a little bit, and it didn't matter where my sister was. Something was always going to happen. It was bound and determined something was going to occur with her. But it was my job to always watch her, to be the responsible one, the one that was the caretaker, because Dad said, this is your sister, you need to watch her. While Dad was off doing whatever Dad was doing. So Dad decides he's going to go gamble a little bit, and he's going to leave a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old at the pool by themselves. Just stay in the shallow end. You'll be fine. Stay in the shallow end. It'll be okay. No big deal. Now, have you ever been to Vegas in the summertime? Let's see, Mom died May of '68, so it probably would have been about June, I'm thinking, possibly. It was 110 degrees in the desert Vegas heat. 110, I'll say. Now, just so happens, Dad would come back and he would check on us, and he'd hang at the fence while we were in there, and he'd say, you girls okay? And we're like, yeah, Daddy, we're fine, we're good, we're fine. Of course, there's a very nice-looking woman at the end of the pool, and he says, makes conversation, don't remember what the conversation was, but she said, I got your girls. She said, I'm keeping an eye on them. Her and my dad strike up this small conversation. She happens to be in Vegas for the rodeo. Now, if I would have known back then that there were, horses in their trailer, because I remember seeing the trailer but not putting 2 and 2 together. Anyway, Dad goes back to gamble. By the time he came back, it was probably 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and my sister and I had been at the pool since 10 o'clock in the morning. I was so sunburned. It was the worst sunburn a child could experience. Odds are I had 2nd-degree burns, and if anybody in their right mind back then, 1968, they would have taken me to an emergency room. I was so sunburned, my dad had to call down to the lobby of the hotel. They brought whatever ice they possibly could to pack me in ice. I had layers of skin peeling off because I was so sunburned. My nose had peeled, my face had peeled, just from hours of swimming in the pool. Did my sister have a mishap that day? I don't think she fell off a step like she normally did, or got caught under the rope like she always did, where the shallow and the deep end always meet. And my sister would always be like, well, I think I can go over there. And she'd always notoriously go under. Another time, Dad left us, he was playing golf, or he was at the clubhouse at the Peevely Farms now, I believe. The lifeguard had to dive in after my sister. They had to call my dad out of the clubhouse. My dad was a wonderful human being on his own terms. I miss my dad dearly, dearly. And I could tear up thinking about it, talking about it. He died way too young, 59 years old. Retired, got sick, turned 59, and then he died. He knew my older 2 kids, and on his last couple days on this earth, he had said, there are so many things I have not been able to teach your kids. And I said, don't worry, Dad, I'll make sure that they know. I'll make sure they know stories about you. Tell me a dad story. Tell me a story about your dad that you want to make sure your kids know about. There's so many. There's so many stories. Because my dad was a truck driver, now I'm lucky I can drive relatively, knock on wood, good. I think I know more things about tractor trailers than any girl should know without driving a tractor trailer. And as much as I like to travel, the one thing that always sticks in my head is my dad would always say, if you see a tractor trailer, you make sure you stay 4 car lengths behind. Don't be riding up on that trailer. There's blind spots. He can't see you. Make sure you're 4 cars behind. They can look out their rear view and they can see where you are. That saved me one year. I decided I was going to go on a big girl trip all by myself to Branson, to Table Rock. I had had enough with life. I was making money. I was going to go do something all on my own. This might have been 2014. Now, of course, I'm a nervous wreck because back then I really hadn't discovered what it was like to be independent like that. When you just get in the car and you just go, you just take off. All the way there, tractor trailers were everywhere. And I could almost hear my dad laughing. And I knew, all these tractor trailers have radios. They're letting somebody know what's going on. 4 tractor trailers followed me. Now, they were probably going Oklahoma. We're going Route 66. But they followed me all the way there. And they watched me the whole time. They let me cut in and out. They let me get around them. They knew when I would get off the highway to go get gas or to stop to get something to eat or drink, and then one would be waiting, and then they would follow me out. Was I afraid? No, I was not afraid. But let me tell you, when I pulled off that exit that you take past Springfield, I think it is, Springfield, Missouri, to go over to Branson, Table Rock. I don't know if it's 76. All 4 of those tractor trailers honked their horn. They watched me the whole time, which made me think my dad was with me. Another story like that, because I want you to reflect today. I want you to think about Father's Day. I want you to think about, as a father, if you were watching this, what legacy and memory are you leaving with your children that they can tell these stories? My sister, who now lives in Wisconsin, we are not in contact. Years back, her husband sadly passed away. He took his life. I couldn't get to my sister quick enough. No, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have GPS. Still driving the same car. I loved my Sonata. Oh my God, I loved my Sonata. And I could hear my dad say in my head, now my dad has been gone for a very long time. My dad died in 1992. And I think my sister's husband now has been gone 10 years, 11 years. But anyway, I kept thinking to myself, I need to get to my sister. I need to get to my sister. I have to get there. And I could hear my dad say, get up, let's go. Let's go. We got to get to your sister. And I'm trying to make all these arrangements. And I get in the car, and I've got a map that I printed out off of the computer. My dad taught me how to read a map. I love reading a map. When my person and I would travel, I made him get a road map of all the states, of all the routes, so I could see where we are. I'd want to know. And I'd say, where are we? He'd say, I don't know, get out the map. So I had this map, and I'm driving, and I always know once I get to Peoria, I'm almost to Wisconsin, and I love Peoria. Peoria is a wonderful river town. If you have never experienced Peoria, Dad took us to the boat races in Peoria. That's probably why I like Peoria. Peoria also has a Bass Pro. When you get off the highway there, before you go to the river part of their downtown, they've got a really nice Bass Pro. Anyway, once I had gotten to Peoria, and I have a huge fear of bridges, and that comes from my dad talking about the old Alton Bridge that swayed back and forth till they built the new one. But anyway, getting over that bridge, the Poplar Street Bridge, which is the worst bridge on the planet, next to the worst, tallest bridge in Charlotte. Got over the bridge. I was like, I'm fine. I'll be fine. I'll figure it out. I had driven to Springfield, Illinois with my older kids when they were young. So I was like, okay, I know this route. I know you veer off from Springfield and you go over to Peoria. And I could still hear my dad in my head. Come on, Peoria's on the other side. Just get this loop. Just take this roundabout. And Peoria's going to be right on the other side. And when you get to Peoria, you're only going to be 3 hours out from where she is. I'm driving, and I had no idea where I was going. I knew I had to get over to Iowa. I knew I was trying to read a map and trying to watch trucks, and it's a whole different experience when you're going further and further. You know, from here to Table Rock was only 4 hours. Here to Wisconsin, it's almost 7 hours, depending on how many times you stop. So I get past Peoria, and I could hear my dad say, "You're almost there. You're almost there. Look for the windmills," because there's a whole path of windmills when you get to that Illinois, Iowa. And then you get to, is it the Quad Cities? It's not the Tri-Cities, it's the Quad Cities. And I could hear my dad say, "We're almost there. We're almost there." Now it was getting dark. Again, I had no map, I had no phone. All I was trying to do was get to my sister. My sister was in need. My sister, her whole life, has always been in need. And I was the sister that always was there, making sure she was going to be okay. I get all the way to Maquoketa. Love Maquoketa. You're 40 minutes out from where my sister is in Maquoketa. And I lost the transmitter with my dad. Lost it. Like, "Dad, where am I? What am I doing?" It was dark. I was starting to get very panicky at that point. Nothing but cornfields, cow fields. So, the whole point in this is, dads, teach your daughters well. Be a good example to your daughters. Raise the standard on how you want them to choose a partner. Teach them how to drive well. Teach them really the rules of the road. Teach them how to read a map. Teach them to be independent enough and aware enough to know more than wrong and right and being morally ethical. Give them a legacy that they can live by. Sadly, when my dad died at the age of 59, it was tragic. It really was. He had given up drinking when I graduated high school in 1979. He said, I don't want my daughter to see me like this anymore. He still ended up succumbing to liver cancer in 1992. It was a painful death. It was a horrific death. My dad was larger than life. Watching him go from this big, strong man to a frail, sick human, it takes a lot out of a person who is caring for their parent. It changes who they are. Watching my dad die, it was probably the most traumatic experience that I could have ever had to go through. And any of you who have been a caretaker to a parent, you know that feeling. You know that you're watching somebody lose their life and there's nothing that you can do. The day that my dad died, the night before, he was restless, couldn't get comfortable. At that time, I weighed 104 pounds. I was chronic hives. My anxiety, my nervous system was just gone. And I couldn't get my dad situated in his bed. And right then and there, I just said a prayer. I said, God, please help. Please. I can't do this anymore. By the morning, my dad had passed away. I woke up to the most beautiful sunshine that I could have ever dreamed, imagined, painted. The way the sun shined through the window, the way the birds were chirping, there was not a cloud in the sky. And I laid there for just a few minutes, knowing what I was going to encounter when I walked into that room. When you think about your dad, and you think about all the stories, and you think about all the trips, and you think about all the places that your dad took you, and what you learned from that. And I know so many people talk about their dad being angry, and when they were on road trips or they went on a trip, their dad was always the one trying to do things, always trying to put something together. And you go camping and the dad's putting the tent up and he's trying to get all the barbecue stuff together. And I can't tell you how many times my dad had to put a Barbie house together or a swing set, and I heard him cuss the whole time. Girls, boys, tell a dad story. Whether it be good, bad, indifferent, whether it makes you cry, whether it makes you relive something that you have forgotten from years ago. Embrace the moments that you had with your father. If you're still able to call him on the phone, whether he makes you angry or not, whether you get along with him or not, pick up the phone, call your dad. Remind your dad of a story and something that will be left with you for the rest of your life. But I am Kitryn Marie. I am an artist, a writer, a speaker, life, and a business coach. Teach a variety of art and communication classes. Published author When He Had Her, available on Amazon. For today and tomorrow, be happy, be blessed, be thankful for everything. Dad and I went fishing one day during the summer when my kids were little. I was laying in a boat, Dad was fishing, we were on our lake, and he said, I know you're unhappy. He said, but I want you to remember something. He said, fate turns on a dime, and it is up to you to decide what side of the coin you would be on. So when you hear me say that tagline, understand where it came from. Fate does turn on a dime, and it is up to you to flip that coin and decide what side of that coin you want to be on. Memories are sweet, life is short. Your folks are only here for so long. Remember that. Remember that with your own children. But y'all take care, and I'll see you real soon.